So according to today's unknown guest right here, he traced the beginning all the way back to Franklin D. Roosevelt. A New Deal, basically, after the Great Depression. The political architecture of US today can be described as a revenge against FDR's socialist policy after the Great Depression, which is more or less what gave birth to what we know today as neoliberalism and neoconservatism. Neocons. The Great Depression is the first financial implosion in US. There were major panics in also before that, every 20, 30 years. But the Great Depression was really the worst, right? Many entities went bankrupt. But the biggest victim, I would say, and always in history, were the normal people, the average Joes. The United States back then, however, is very different compared to today. It was still a relatively new power, and there are many thoughtful individuals who care about the country's future. When FDR came to power, according to the presenter today, he's a very wise leader. Okay, injected a certain amount of socialism into the country, but dress it up as in a way that general public can accept. This New Deal policy, right? Over the next few decades, American socialists peaked at around President LBJ pushed forward programs called the Great Society. So many of the social benefits Americans have today trace all the way back to that presidency and that era. The legislation came from that time. But everything went downhill from there. Why? Because the big corporations, the oligarchs, obviously do not prefer these programs and being isolated from political arena in such a way. So what happened was that beginning as early as 1950s, these large corporations, wealthy elites, start to put influence over US education system. Beginning with the University of Chicago, the economic department, and in 1959, Ford and Rockefeller, two giants at that time, put in huge investment into several big US business schools. Before 1959, these business schools are not well recognized or respected. However, after 20 years of investment and promotion, after 1980s, having a diploma from those now famous business school became a requirement to enter important position in big corporation organization and so on. The goal is not just to promote the schools, but use them to promote the mindset of raw capitalism, that by having so-called free capital, free market, and free everything without the consideration of society damage is the proper way to move forward. The core concept surrounding this is that as long as each individual or corporate entities try its best to maximize profit, other things will automatically solve itself out. We need to minimize regulations and minimize the government intervention and things like that. This is of course not true, and it creates many problems within a country, economy, and society. So we need to find the right balance. It's not all the way to the right or to the left. It's to find the right balance. The goal of this particular project to influence the education system is to reverse the effect of socialist projects started by FDR, to unchain the wealth that was binded to the middle class here in the United States, and to condense them back to the oligarchy class. Okay, achieve that, they need to use all those education institutes they corrupted to brainwash the population with that kind of mindset. It's like the movie Inception, right? You need to insert an ideology into a person's head so they can willingly follow the way you want them to have to. and to vote a certain way. So they need to create this systematic propaganda narrative to broadcast it and continue to rebroadcast it until the public learn to accept it, right? So this is what the presenter here stated. It's when the neoliberal movement started, and many NGOs and think tanks were also founded and funded starting back in the 1970s. So as my audience can see now, this is a systematic influence or corruption, if you want to put it that way, bed the interests of oligarchy class into the US government. Started by influencing the economic school first, and then followed by the business school, and then move up the political ladder, and finally, president into power to do their bidding. The first president that they were able to put in the White House was, according to, I guess here, Ronald Reagan. This is when the supply side economics are being pushed to the limit. Basically, it is a strategy pushed forward by the wealthy oligarchy class. For my older generation American audience, if you remember the older traditional Democrats, the core concept, the core value is to resist and push back this influence of raw capitalism, right? And is this raw capitalism the potential degenerating impact or damage it might cause to the country or the society. So the old Democrats in US remember those core values. But during the last few decades, the new Democrats, that is actually backed by the capitalists themselves, found a way to circumvent the obstacle, and they figure out how to find a loophole to try to push this value away. So beginning from 1986, or well, even before 1986, the Democrats are more pro-labor. All right, they are pro-strengthening the middle class. They are balanced and pro this equality in wealth. Right, those are their priority back then. What is secondary is things like women's rights, minorities' rights, and animal rights, and all those things. There are talks, but those are not important issues back then. So the tricks that the neoliberalism, that those entities use, is to break the traditional Democrat Party value, to flip the value of Democrats and bring those what I would consider, people please do not get insulted, to bring those values that is not so important and make them important. Things like anti-nuclear power, women, minority rights, animal rights. You have to go to a chicken farm to save those chicken from becoming a KFC meal, freedom, and all those things. So those things, they try to emphasize that those things are important value. And then they push aside this traditional core value of finding balance within a country and push the original agenda of Democrat Party to find this balance between capital and society, and push that away so they can do whatever they want. They do this because only through that way they can continue to manipulate the public, the government, to advance their own interests. What you see today, those what we call woke agenda, those are distraction. They're intentionally put in front of us to distract us from looking at the real problems in our society, the continuation of condensation of power into the oligarchy class, while we are distracted with things like Black Lives Matter, okay, those kind of things. 6 years after 1986, these so-called neoliberals were able to install a new president, the famous, President Clinton right here, into power. Oh, sorry, wrong picture. And push this corporate agenda even further. So this entire process changed both the Democrats Party and the United States fundamentally. All right. Things happened in United Kingdom as well at the same time, with Margaret Thatcher equivalent to Ronald Reagan, and after that Tony Blair is kind of the same as Bill Clinton. Okay. So with this entire progression came also the transformation of the United States from a country in which the power projection rests upon the strength of its military and industry, its productivity, to become a country in which its power rests and anchor upon the financial harvest, power projection through USD as a reserve currency, a currency that is anchored to almost nothing but trust. Okay. So what we consider as neoliberalism today is the propaganda narrative that work hands in hand with the financial harvest, the monetary financial dominance of the United States. So-called, when US promote neoliberalism, it's actually promoting financial colonialism around the planet. Right? And I explained that in some of my previous video. The presenter here today also talked about neoconservatism, which we come to call Neocon today. That traces its root to the middle of 1990s and 1996 to be exact, according to him, in which it was originally intended for Israel, in which Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Okay, this is the part I'm not too familiar with. Maybe Jeffrey Sachs and John Mearsheimer is more familiar with that topic. They wrote books and spend hours on YouTube talking about those things. Maybe you can refer to them, but I'm just go through lightly here. This neoliberalism and neoconservatism were supposed to be two separate ideology and opposing narrative, right? But it end up to be the same. Being that the neoliberalism is at its roots use financial and soft power projection to obtain dominance and wealth in the world. Now, Neocon is in a way trying to achieve the same thing by using more violent and direct means, military, which is more suitable for Israel because the state of Israel is surrounded by hostile Muslim states, right? So in which ideology projection alone is not so useful, and you need to use military as deterrence, which is much more suitable for that kind of situation. So the first neocon president, or president that got manipulated in adapting this neocon strategy, is President Bush Jr.
And the decision of one man to launch a wholly unjustified and brutal invasion of of Ukraine. Iraq, too. Anyway, 75.
So Bush started two wars intentionally, or, the deep state or establishment kind of tempted or forced him to do so. The Iraq War and the Afghan War both cost the United States a lot of money, at least $5 trillion. Some say as much as 10 trillion. Very foolish. And many said that the United States was tricked by the neocon Jewish establishment in doing so. So from the point of view of United States, Americans should understand that the US has the best geographical location on this planet. We're isolated and protected by two large bodies of oceans, right? So Americans shouldn't really need to be involved in those wars, theoretically. So this Neocon project in Ukraine right now, I have argued with my friends in Europe. It is actually a successful operation, I would say. For my channel's audience, you should also understand my position from previous video. I make at least 3 to 4 videos on Ukraine alone. I said that this actually worked, okay? The Ukraine war is a modified version of the previous Neocon war, which compared to Iraq and Afghanistan, the US troops or NATO was not directly involved. And the fight was used by a proxy, which Ukraine was used by as a proxy for to serve the United States on this particular purpose. And through provoking the war, the MIC, the energy sector make over $1 trillion in combined. The energy sector made a lot of money in the first year, over $500 billion. And the MIC made as much over the next, 2 years and another 500 billion combined 1 trillion. And I would say the financial sector might have resulted in even more profit. So basically, US used the Europe as an inflation dumpster. So what we are looking at today, the United States, okay, at its complete form after years of evolution, is the perfection. Is perfection a way to put it? No, okay, the perfection of neo-colonialism by merging neoliberalism with neocon at its core foreign policy. Okay, so neoliberalism use propaganda narratives, all those democracy and freedom things, and to demonize its geopolitical rivals, and do all those regime change things and that. And the neocons now has adapted, instead of fighting war by itself, use all kinds of different proxy to trigger war to serve the same purpose. So there will not be that much of a backlash here in United States, because the Americans are dying in the battlefield, which is not good. Vietnam is a good example, so they don't want to do it again. Iraq and Afghanistan, we lost some people, but still it's something that people will prefer not to do again. So from now on, it's probably a lot of proxy war. So in this long 2-part video, I gave my audience a condensed version of how I see United States. And for people who question why I think a certain way in my previous videos, this might answer some of your questions. So if you look at the executive branch of the United States today, the White House, the president, it held a lot less power than what is supposed to have, compared to, let's say, FDR or Lyndon Johnson or Nixon era. I forgot who was it. Robert Barnes. He also has a channel. He used the UK as an example. Okay, Queen Elizabeth II, which we all know she held no true power, right? The whole monarch thing is more like ceremonial theatrics. Over the last 3 to 4 decades, the presidents of United States has slowly turned into something also similar to that. If I have to put a scale, okay, let's say from 0 to 10, 10 being someone like Kim Jong-un having like pure full power, and 0, okay, who's a 0? I would say like someone like Richard Sunak. Someone, to me, it feels like a 0. He is basically a puppet. So if you have a 0 to 10 scale, what is a US president? So historically, the Constitution limit the power of US president, right, to maybe a 3 or 4. And during some special times, his power might push to a 5, but never over a 5, okay? All these people telling me that US president was intentionally weak because it's not good to have a dictator in power. Okay, I get it. And over the years, the institutional corruption of the government make the president power even weaker, I would say. To me, Biden feel like a 0 or 0.5. He doesn't know if he's dead or alive most of the time. So why the oligarchy want to fund him? Because he doesn't get in their way, right? That's why he gets funding. And even if he act like a zombie, there are still power who want to push him forward to become a president. He just do exactly what they say. So to conclude, now you guys know me. How, for example, Ben from Geopolitical Economic Report, also Brian from the New Actors, right? Their point of view is that, well, Trump is just part of the deep state. There's no difference. He committed as much crime as Obama and Clinton and all that. I respect their opinion and I disagree with them. I do not see. It's because the definition of president and deep state of mine is different from theirs, okay? And it's important for my audience to understand my thoughts. You don't have to agree with me, but you have to understand my chain of thoughts and logic. Okay, let's use Trump as an example, okay? And this is regarding 2024. Trump, compared to other presidents over the past 2-3 decades, or candidates, is the least donor dependent one because he's wealthy to begin with, right? Relatively speaking, of course, he can just go F you to all the donors if they disagree with him, theoretically speaking, again. The second thing is that during his first presidency, there's clear struggle between him and the establishment more than any previous president. It might seem like in foreign policy sector, he did many things that seem to be following the order from the deep state. But for me, Ben and Brian, or for my audience, we don't know exactly how obedient Trump was, right, during his first term. To me, he might be pushing his limit on what a US president can do in this era to push back against certain establishment decisions. For many of us, maybe Trump need to perform to an 8, a 9. For example, if you see Vladimir Putin to be a President Xi to be a 9, and Kim to be a 10. Even if you put something like Stalin or Hitler or Chairman Mao into the US president today, the best they can do is a 3. That's the reality, the situation of US politics. A president, no matter how bullish you are, the best you can do at this era is a 3. So in that kind of, if you think about it in that kind of mindset, people are expecting too much performance from a US president for it to be performing like a 6 or a 7 in order for you to not consider them to be deep state. I think that kind of mindset is not matching with reality. That's what I will say. I think it might be brave enough for a president to push to be a 3 because the establishment want the president to be nothing more than a 0, like Joe Biden or Nikki Haley, and just say yes, yes, yes to everything, right? Again, I'm not glorifying Trump. So to some of the commentators, they have too much expectation on Trump or on a US president, what they can do. They will never do what a Chinese president can do because the constitution just do not allow them. I do not have that kind of expectation to begin with, not because of Trump, but because I know what to expect from a US president. To expect them to do those kind of things are unrealistic to begin with. So going back to this assassination, I began this video an hour ago with this assassination, right? I will go back to it. So the possible scenario, now you know how I think. The possible scenario comes down to this, okay? Yeah, it's possible. It's just a random gunman, just crazy guy. To me, this is very unlikely due to all the current evidence, as you guys probably see already. I think most of my friends either think that this is a deep state operation or Trump or somebody in the Republican Party faked the entire thing. Now, that's the second scenario, right? Some of my friends here in California, they are very pro-Biden, pro-Democrats, and do not like Trump. Okay, I see their point, right? They see, okay, this is just a setup by Trump and his team to boost his chance of winning. Not impossible. I think that is a scenario that's a little bit more likely, still very unlikely to me, but more likely than the crazy solo guy, okay? Not impossible, but to me, again, it's very unlikely judging by there are real casualty, and it's in front of thousands of people. You have to hire a lot of people to act and play this entire thing out and to conceal it in a way that people won't figure out. And this is difficult to pull out, including that Trump is leading in the poll by a lot in front of Biden. So for someone, let's say, put forward by the deep state, for them to do all this kind of theatric in order to do gain against who exactly? Who's the next, anti deep state or anti anything candidate that's able to come above Trump? I don't see there's any. So for them to do so much, all this is theatric to support Trump. I don't see that. Is this higher possibility, but not that possible to me again. Now, the third scenario is what I consider the most likely scenario, is that there are major disagreement that Trump has with the core establishment entities, decision regarding especially war, conflict, financial, and tax agenda. And Trump doesn't want to back off. And time is running out. And Biden is losing his brain cells and turning into a zombie. So somebody decided to pull the trigger to see if they can swing the favor back into their hand, and it didn't work out. That's, to me, I think the most likely scenario. My conclusion kind of goes like this, okay? Like I said in my video, the establishment made a lot of money through the Ukraine war, for example, and probably want to drag it even longer. And they probably have other projects ongoing as well, which potentially might earn them a lot of profit. And judging by their experience with Trump in the first term of Trump presidency, they didn't have a good experience. So they just do not want Trump to be in power this time. However, that being said, if Trump become president, Trump is likely to disturb or interrupt those projects, but is Trump able to stop them? Probably not all. I think it will cause them to lose some potential profits, which is enough for them to maybe pull off something like that. But at the end, Trump probably will not change the course, the grand course. What I mean here is that I had a discussion with a Trump supporter in my comment section, and he was telling me that how Trump is able to, come to the White House and change everything and correct the course and this and that. I was talking to him and I explained it this way, okay? Even if Trump is the real deal, okay, he's the second coming of Jesus Christ of something according to them, which are not the way I think it. But what can he do realistically? What can he achieve realistically in 4 years? It took the oligarchy class over half a century to turn America into what it is today. It will also take decades to reverse the course. And Trump is, 70, almost 80 years old right now. And what can he do realistically in just 4 years, one term, right? You need to have a younger version of Trump and give him 20, 30 years to try to adjust the course, even if he knows exactly where to head to. Or you need to have consecutive Trump and want to change course in the same direction in order for change to really happen. And how likely is that scenario? I'm not sure. So one final point, okay? In the English language, independent media space, okay, I cannot find a single neutral geopolitical commentators when it comes to China and US. It's either anti-China or pro-China. A lot of the channels I know you guys watch regarding China, I think it's just too soft on China, too forgiving, okay? China has a lot of problems, I will be honest with you, which is why I'm not trying to put forward too much Chinese propaganda narrative, try to sell you those Chinese junk, because we here in the United States, we have our own junk, okay? I want to be realistic and honest. I don't want to fall into this mindset of grass is greener on the other side. Both countries have tons of problems they need to fix. And whoever is able to solve majority of those problems will come out on top at the end. That's how I think it. And yeah, that's it for the video. Thank you guys for watching this very, very long 2-part video, and I'll see you guys in the next video.